I love sitting in nature until I sit down and then immediately think, what if there's a black widow right next to me? Lately, I've been starting every month with the worst book I've ever read, and this month was no exception. My brother told me to read this book, and I didn't have a terrible time, but there's a lot of problems with, how do I say this? With the way that the author thinks of certain people. This is from the perspective of a girl who's in her early 20s. Her name's Mallory. Mallory goes up for a job as like a live-in nanny for this couple that has one child. And as she starts taking care of this child, he starts drawing these really creepy things and as an imaginary friend and starts having these visions that are just truly terrifying. What I love about the book is that it actually does have drawings, so you like see all of the illustrations. That's super fun because then the book goes by really fast. The mystery is pretty good. Like, I will say the plot twist is not disappointing, but I just can't enjoy this book because it's so problematic. The first thing that kind of ticked me off is when they're like sitting outside in the backyard and the lawn boy comes up and he's Hispanic, which is like, okay, it's a stereotype. I understand that stereotypes are not untrue, they're just incomplete, so like it's not wrong that he's Hispanic, but it just feels a little bit like that was my first inclination that maybe this was kind of offbeat. I'm also just tired, like if you're creating a world, like why do you have to make that, like you don't have to do that. Anyway, the second thing that ticked me off is all the characters are white and the only people of color are kind of described in a very negative light. There's one Asian character, and when she's brought up, she's described as a weirdo who likes anime and has colored hair. I, at first, didn't really think about it, but then the more I let it ruminate, I was like, wait, why, what in there makes her a weirdo? I don't think liking anime and having different colored hair makes you a weirdo. I think it almost seems like you're putting your own opinions onto the page. And then the last thing that really takes me off is that there's a Hungarian woman in here, and the main character talks about her and says she didn't speak a lot of English, so I assumed she was someone's cleaning lady. Why? It was those three things. And then the actual plot twist is, there's a review that says it perfectly. I will link it down below because it says exactly all my thoughts in better wording. All that to be said, I just would not recommend this book to anyone. I'm sorry, Avery. It was fun to read, but very problematic. The next book I read was The Idiot by Elif Batman. I read this book 3 years ago, and I felt so detached from the storyline. I just had no interest. I didn't even finish it, and then I just kept seeing it everywhere. And also, this book just sounds completely up my alley, so I was like, okay, I gotta give it a second chance. And I'm so glad that I did, because I loved this book. I enjoyed every second of it. This takes place in the East Coast in the 90s. Our main character, Selin, is a freshman at Harvard. She's a linguistics major, I believe. She's taking a lot of really cool classes. She's learning Russian. She's spending the summer after her freshman year abroad in France, Hungary, and Turkey, I believe. Basically, she's in the good old days of her life. She's doing all these amazing things, but all she can think about is this stupid boy that she met who treats her terribly, who literally has a girlfriend. And I think that this book is the epitome of the man you meet when you're 19. If you are not 19 yet, and you're about to be, don't talk to any men until you're 20. Elif is a very, very smart woman, and you can tell from the way she writes. There were so many things she referenced that I just know went completely over my head. It's a very dense book. Like every sentence has a new thing happening, and you really have to pay close attention, but if you get it, you get it. And I understand if you don't, because the first time I read it, I just wasn't really interested, but I really liked it this time. It's very much like dry humor. It's very observant, very character driven. I wrote down some quotes I liked, so let me share some. It occurred to me that I could be less mindful of man, and I seemed to catch a glimpse of freedom. She's like writing this like mean email to the guy, to the awful guy. And she says, I wrote terrible things, the worst things I could think of. I called him a movie director. I looked around, wondering what else to bring. I saw the Einstein poster. This reminded me to bring a hairbrush. I do believe that, like, on some level, you can't read a book until the book is already in you. And I think that's why when I read it the first time, I just didn't appreciate it enough, because I didn't have the experience then that I do now. Which is also why I really like to read books that I read a time before and then enjoy them the second time, because, I mean, the book didn't change. All that changed was me. And then I kind of start to like reflect on my life, and then I get emotional, and then, I don't know. Life is beautiful though. The next book I read was Tuesdays with Morrie. This is a true story about the author's experience with his aging professor, who's not really his professor anymore. This is like a few years after college, but his professor, Morrie, is diagnosed with ALS, and he is given a few months to live. So Mitch spends every Tuesday with him up until he passes away. The book is just comprised of a bunch of conversations they have about the meaning of life and regrets and everything you can possibly think of. I read this in one day. I just sat down in the sun with a little drink and read the whole thing, and it was beautiful. Very popular for a reason. I would definitely recommend reading it. I think anyone could take at least one thing away from this book. I had to read this book for class, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's called The Joys of Motherhood. It's a post-colonial feminist piece about a woman named Enuego. It takes place in Nigeria in, I think, the 60s or 70s. This book was published in late 70s, so probably 60s, 70s-ish. She's born into a time where all a woman's worth is if they can provide children. Her whole life she's told, like, you have to have kids. And she believes, like, these children will bring me joy, and this is my true purpose. So when she gets married and can't have kids, she's really struggling with her self-worth. She leaves that man, gets married to a new man who she describes as being very fat and ugly. And it's said many times in this book, which I think is hilarious. She has one kid with him, and then the child passes away. She just feels incredibly, incredibly worthless, and she tries to unalive herself. The book goes on to explore her opinion of motherhood and how it changes even after she has like 7 kids, and she just continues to think like, okay, if I have more it'll be better, and I just need to have more. I need to have more sons, like then I will be fulfilled and my purpose will be completed. It's interesting to see how she kind of starts to realize that maybe it's not actually her purpose, maybe it's not fulfilling, maybe it's not what women were meant to do. It's really powerful. I think obviously present day America is very different from 1970s Nigeria, but there's still a lot of parallels. It's also just, I think, really important to read intimate stories like this from different parts of the world, because I would never have known anything about 1970s Nigeria if I hadn't read this book, and now I at least know a little bit. The last book I read is the second book to The Idiot, because it has a sequel called Either Or. I love that there's a sequel to this book, because it's not the kind of book you would expect a sequel out of, but I love that there's a second book, because then I could spend more time with this character, and I loved it. This takes place over her sophomore year, and then her summer after sophomore year, so it's kind of the same format as the first one. In this one, she's recovering from what happened with the terrible man. He's gone now. He went to school in California, so good riddance. And she's having new experiences with new people. She's learning what it means to make her own decisions and to grow up. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, I almost kind of liked this one more, just because I feel like it wraps up the story so well. She just has such a humorous take on everything. She's experiencing all these like first things with men, and she's just like describing all of these vulgar and embarrassing encounters she has, but it's so relatable and real. I was just informed that I'm sitting next to a skunk hole. It's the kind of book that makes you feel more entitled to your own humanness. Does that even make sense? I just feel like I read this book and I was like, you know what? I'm not wrong. No, that's not the feeling. It's more like I'm listening to this girl learn about life, and I'm feeling so much more understood. It was overall a very good ending to this month. Follow me on Goodreads and keep reading, please.